Since humanity began, there have always been major questions. How did life begin? What is the meaning of life? What if Derrick Rose never got that ACL injury? And of course, who is better, Playboi Carti or Lil Uzi Vert? Seriously, these two have always been compared to each other, and we've been debating this for who knows how long. I love both Carti and Uzi equally, and have nostalgia tied to both of them, so honestly finding this question out interests me just as much as anyone else. Some of the biggest artists to come out of their era, Carti and Uzi have always been closely compared as they started from similar roots. They often collabed and were even rumored to have a collaborative mixtape in the works. However, as the years went on, their sounds diverged, and yet we still compare the two. So here I am trying to solve the debate. Who is better, Playboi Carti or Lil Uzi Vert, using data? What kind of data, you may ask? Well, I wanted to solve this debate using as much information as possible, so I looked through every single Carti and Uzi song on their albums and mixtapes to compare them. So let's break it down. First, I used an algorithm based on my last video, which included every single Uzi and Carti song's ratings on Album of the Year, Rate Your Music, and Music Board. Next, I compared every single Uzi song to every single Carti song's streams, saw how many songs of the other artist that each song was streamed more than, and then converted that to a percentage and added it to their average ranking. For example, say Yamin was streamed 5 times, it would be less streamed than every Uzi song, so it would get a stream score of 0, which would then be added to the average ranking. So after all that was said and done, I took the 50 best Uzi songs and the 50 best Carti songs based on this criteria, and put them all together in a list. So we're going to go over every song and look at their score, then at the end we'll look at the data based on these rankings and debate once and for all who is the best. We'll look at each artist's average placement, each album's average placement, and then maybe that will finally solve who's the best. This is Uzi versus Carti. But first, did you know that only 11% of people watching my videos are subscribed? So if you like this concept, or you just want to see more from me, leave a like, a comment, a subscribe, whatever you got. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's start going over every song that made the list. These are the top 100, top 50 from Uzi, top 50 from Carti. I only looked at officially released songs on mixtapes and albums, which also included bonus tracks. If I looked at unreleased songs, then we'd have a whole different debate. So let's look at all the songs first. These first songs go from a 7.0 to a 7.5. And we're starting off with a tie between Werewolf and Pluto to Mars. And I think I'm gonna go with Pluto to Mars for this one. Werewolf was cooler in concept than execution, which I think can be said for a lot of Pink Tape. As for Pluto to Mars, it's a perfect mix between the best of Uzi and the new style seen all over Pink Tape. And honestly, one of my favorites from it. Underrated track. The flow from Uzi and Thug mixed with that fast-paced beat is just peak trap. A track that's runtime is perfect. It gets in, it sounds dope, and it leaves. Honestly, I love this track. Just one of those classic Uzi bangers on the Perfect Love tape. It's the definition of SoundCloud rap, and it's another underrated one. Feels a bit unfinished to me. The beat is a little too hollow, and I much prefer the single with the similar name. Moon Relate was a track that grew on me like crazy. First time I heard it, I wasn't too big of a fan, but Uzi's delivery grew on me like it has for a lot of tracks. It's a great one. Super spacey track that works great as the closer. Sick track. That beat sounds like an iPhone ringtone in the nicest way possible. I swear this thing pops into my head more often than I'd expect. Sick track. Another tie, this time I'll go with Baby Are You Home. Suicide Doors is one of the better examples of rage on this album, but it's still not the best to me. Really like the chorus though. Baby Are You Home, however, is just a simple and great track that I really don't have anything bad to say about it. Definitely grew on me a bit. One of the better, more left field tracks on Pink Tape. Glad it made it to the top 100. Pull Up was always essentially an interlude in my mind. I don't really think of it as a full song from Die Lit, so I see why it's down here. It's a really goofy song, but it's still catchy nonetheless. I understand the placement though. Not too surprised its streaming score was so low either. To be honest though, it's higher than I expected. Low-key my favorite from this mixtape, at least it's my most listened. I forget that this thing is 5 minutes long, it never feels like it. The first Carti and Uzi collab on this ranking, and it definitely gets underrated under the other behemoths, but it's still good. Maybe this is an absolutely nuclear take, but this is my favorite song from Whole Lotta Red. That production is so simple but so catchy. Carti and Future's vocals work together so well, and I think it's so slept on. I think it will get its love soon. It kind of reminds me of I Serve the Bass, which is getting a lot of love. These next ones go from 7.5 all the way to 8. It's okay. It's one of those Whole Lotta Red songs that kind of just come and go. I do like the delivery on it though. On the other hand, I like the beat on this one, just not too big of a fan of his delivery. It's not the best. I really liked it when I first heard Whole Lotta Red, but maybe that's because it's one of the most similar to Die Lit. It grew off me though, just not a lot going on here. Another one I like the beat a lot more than Carti's vocals. Can't deny it's catchy though. Not my favorite from this mixtape, but there's not a single bad song on it. Uzi's singing is great. This song feels like it builds up to something that just doesn't happen. I kinda like Ye's verse on it though. Bigger Than Life is one of the better tracks on Eternal Atake. I love the strings and the background choir. Really works well in the context of the whole album too. A pretty average track from Self-Titled. I don't go back to it too much, but I'm always pleasantly surprised when I do listen to it. High Roller is another one of those tracks on this mixtape that has a weird alien beat that works really well. Not one of the biggest hits from that album, but still very good. Another of the more forgettable on Self-Titled. I really do love the production on it though. I absolutely love Red Cold Hearted on this track. I still have no idea who that is, to be honest. The beat does what Die Lit does best. It creates a huge psychedelic dome around you. Super underrated. Amazing outro that's a little corny in all the right ways. Carti's voice on here is wild, but it still works ridiculously well. This one's a sleeper from Self-Titled. Everything that makes this mixtape good is here. It's catchy, it's got great production, great flows. It's a great song. One of Uzi's higher energy tracks, and I love it. It feels like a roller coaster with the constant shifts and the speed of the flow. Definitely bottom half of Die Lit, but by no means bad. His repetitive flow makes it feel like he's reading off a teleprompter in the best way possible. Love the swirly beat here. It definitely feels like classic Pierre. This one's not one of my favorites from Eternal Atake, but I do love Uzi's flow on it. This one, however, is one of my personal favorites from Eternal Atake. The flow is non-stop, and those beautiful, beautiful background vocals are there as well. Another Uzi collab that gets a bit overlooked for the other one on Self-Titled. It's not bad at all, but it's not the most memorable if it didn't have the Uzi verse. Would be a really great song if it didn't have that minute-long intro. Get this dude out of my ears. One of my least favorite from Whole Lotta Red. Something about it just feels a bit generic. Cuddy's verse on it was actually pretty good though. A really weird beat that actually works really well. One of the more underrated melodic cuts on this record. I really love Silly Watch. It's so catchy and so easy to rap along with. A lot of fun. Amazing intro for one of my favorite mixtapes of all time. It sets the tone perfectly for the rest of the mixtape through its beat and its flow. Awesome track. To be honest, there's not a lot I like about this song. I used to like it a lot when I was first getting into Whole Lotta Red, but it fell off hard for me since. The beat on this one sounds like something off of Carti's Self-Titled. It's a very fun track. Another one of my favorites from Eternal Atake. It's a perfect mix of the alien beat, a great flow, good vocals, everything that represents the best of this record. Loving the delivery on this track. It hits hard, it works so well with the whole album. It's a great song. Next up, these ones' final scores went from an 8 all the way to a 9. Debatably the worst on Die Lit, but it fluctuates for me. Some days I love it and think it's underrated, but others I almost skip it. I think somewhere around the middle sounds about right. Another tie, and I'm going with Paradise on this one. Lo Mein is a little bit too simple, though the production is good. Paradise is just a great melodic trap song that I'm surprised is still kind of slept on to this day. This song's beat low-key sounds more like an Uzi song. I think it's one of the most nostalgic sounding from Die Lit. Some days it's my favorite. Such a hit. I think I like Pluto's contribution to this track more than Uzi's, but both do their thing. Love the sounds that come into play in the chorus. Straight up great. So catchy with Carti's delivery on the chorus, mixed together with that extremely unique beat. That lion roar heals my soul. Sosa's verse is perfect too. Love him on this type of production. Proof that Uzi can still make bangers that break through the mainstream. This song was inescapable for like a year, and I was never complaining. What a sick trap banger. One of the better tracks on Whole Lotta Red. Loved it the first time I heard it. When the bells come in around the 30-second mark, it gets even better. Short, sweet, and great. Beat reminiscent of Die Lit with the reversed and warped synths. Helps that Carti's verses and chorus are just classic. Perfect example of how the simplicity on Die Lit can be the best. Both Carti and Gunna can glide over that beat. P2 is just Diet XO Tour Life, so I'm surprised it ranked this high. Definitely carried by the stream score. Although it is a very nice thank you and reflection on Uzi's career thus far. Prices is easily my favorite song on Eternal Take, and it was from the day I first heard it. Those heavenly voices mixed with Uzi's cutting vocals make a climactic and just straight up dope song. According to this list, this is the better track called Top in both of their discographies. Both are equally as minimal, but I do like Uzi's singy delivery on this one. Over has got an infectious synth line and almost reminds me of Long Time. This does make sense though, because they were both produced by Art Dealer, who really needs to link with Carti more. The last tie on the list, I'm gonna go with Love Hurts just barely on this one. Something about it just captures me more than the other song. I think the dark and sinking instrumental is more interesting than the other track's relatively simple beat. A simple banger from Die Lit. Love Thug's verse on here. Dark Queen is what Love Is Rage 2 does best. Amazing production and synth work mixed with unique deliveries and catchy flows. Great song. Futsal Shuffle is one of those Eternal Take tracks that just immediately transports me back to 2020. One of the tracks that dropped into the build-up of that album that had me in a chokehold. Banger. I gotta say, upon first listen, this was my favorite on Pink Tape, but I think like tracks like Rehab or Pluto to Mars got my heart a little more than this one now. I like the delivery reminiscent of Love Is Rage 2 though from Uzi. Gotta be the most infectious chorus on this whole album. I swear it pops into my head like every day to a point where I gotta hear this song again. So addicting. This song is one that I'd want to see live. As it stands, it's kind of bottom half for Die Lit for me. Such a catchy song. Chief Keef does his thing with his perfect delivery. Great one. You Was Right is another huge song in the mix of huge songs on this mixtape. I'd say it's definitely the Uzi song I've heard the most in my life. I love how Sauce It Up takes the sound palette of Love Is Rage and makes it into more of a classic Uzi song. I actually really like this song's aggressive and driving beat. Sounds like you're running to catch up to someone or running away from someone. It's a great track. I feel like this is another one of those that was made to be seen live. I don't really like it on its own though. One of the best psychedelic beats on Die Lit, and that's really saying a lot. I love Carti's delivery on here. That whoa in the chorus is so dope. Great intro to Eternal Take. I can see why it's the highest ranked from that album. It sets up the world on it perfectly. It's a goofy song, but it's endearing. I don't really go back to listen to Vamp Anthem ever, and I can't really believe it's been streamed that many times, but I don't hate it. I was surprised to see Yesssirski ranked this high in every regard. I think it does what it does well, but I don't think it's the most memorable from that project. I do admit I've listened to this so many times when I was younger. Everything Uzi does best comes through on this track. Catchy flow, great chorus, amazing beat. What's really not to love with 7 AM? It's a little bit cheesy, but I think New Choppa does well. Microcosm of Atlanta Trap for sure. Never been the biggest Rockstar Made fan, but I will admit it's a great intro. Hearing it the first time was crazy. Flatbed Freestyle might be my favorite on Die Lit. I don't know what Carti did to this song to make it so good. It's that type of song that pissed people off when Die Lit first came out, but honestly it's genius. I'd say this track is a little overrated, and then we get to the second half. Such insanely wide production that is simply perfect. Then Carti comes back in it with only a minute left, and it somehow gets even better. I've been listening to the hell out of this song for this video. Seriously haven't heard it this much since it came out, but something about it just never gets old, and I don't know how it does it, but it's a banger. P's and Q's never fails to put me in a good mood. Whether it's that goofy beat or Uzi's infectious hook, this is no doubt a hit. These synths on this track really make the whole thing. The way they kind of zigzag around Carti's main verse make it such a cool song. I love it. Finally, with the last 17 tracks, these go from a 9, and there's one that is ranked over a 10. Neon Guts is one of my favorite Uzi tracks, and there's no doubt it belongs in the top 20. I don't know what to say about this song that makes it so good. It's just everything. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but this might be my favorite on Die Lit. It literally makes you feel like you're swirling around a whirlpool. There's nothing else like it. Shout out to Skepta's excellent verse. I'll be honest, it's not my favorite from Whole Lotta Red, and I think it's one of those that was definitely meant to see live, and surprisingly I've never seen Carti live, so it doesn't really do much for me. Definitely one of Uzi's best for sure. One of the most uplifting anthems from this time period. Nostalgia from this song hits me like a truck. That alien beat is so good. This is one of Uzi's biggest hits from the time, and it just makes sense. Great flow, crazy beat, insane song. Low-key should be top 10. Just so catchy, man. Those glitchy background vocals is just genius production. Shout out Bryson Tiller. Probably one of my most listened to Uzi songs. It's just not aged, period. I've been bumping it for what, like 8 years now? Peak 2016 song. Starting off the top 10 with Sky, this is one of the songs on Whole Lotta Red that kind of threw it back to Die Lit, and I think it worked well with Sky, especially since this is one of his bigger hits now. The Way Life Goes is one of those songs that make you think Uzi is the best artist alive. Undoubtedly amazing and endlessly replayable. Woke Up Like This is the first collab that I think of when I think of Carti and Uzi. Another song that's so infectiously simple. I love both their flows and the production is unmatched. On the other hand, R.I.P. is the first song that comes to mind when I think of Die Lit, which I think is really interesting because it's the most different sounding song in this album. I love the aggression in both the delivery and the beat. Another absolute classic. This top 10 is really stacked. Melodic Uzi at their peak. How can you not listen to this song and get happy? Everything here is perfection. I've mentioned simplicity a lot in this video, but no song demonstrates less is more than Magnolia. The simplest beat in the world creates one of the best bangers of the era. Love this song. Long Time is one of the most emotional trap instrumentals of all time. The fact that intro is in the title shows that Carti knew exactly what he was doing with this track. What an insane song. How fitting that the two biggest tracks with both of them both make the top 10 really shows how much they ran the SoundCloud genre around this time. Never was a big Fantano guy, but I watched his Die Lit review and I think he put it best. This track is like Trap Christmas, really unlike any other song from either of their categories, something magical about it. Location is one of the most classic beats of all time. It makes me float every time I hear it. Definitely one of Carti's best, if not his best period. If Self-Titled just wasn't full of hits, I'd say this was a career-defining track. And at number 1 is EXO Tour Life, which is honestly just a classic. I know I've been saying this word a lot throughout this whole video, but honestly, there's no other song that even touches this one. It's a definitive classic of the 2010s no matter what genre you're talking about. I mean, the song literally ranked over a 10, and it's 100% deserved. You know this track like the back of your hand, and you probably expected to see it up here, but honestly, can you be disappointed? It's a perfect song. Okay, after all those songs, it seems like things are pretty even. While Carti had 7 out of the top 10, Uzi did finish with the best overall song. It was also very back and forth for the majority of the ranking. So let's take a look at album by album's average rankings on the top 100. In last place with an average ranking of 78 is Pink Tape, followed by Lil Uzi Vert vs. The World at 61.6, then Vs. The World 2 at 60.1, Perfect Love Tape at 58.8, Eternal Atake at 54.5, Whole Lotta Red with a 53.6, Love Is Rage with 48.5, Self-Titled at 39.6, Die Lit at 38.75, and finally Love Is Rage 2 with 28.15. So this generally follows the trends of the list. Pink Tape showed up more near the bottom, Whole Lotta Red had highs and lows, and Love Is Rage had a lot of love in the top half of the list. So finally, the moment we've all been waiting for, who had the higher average ranking? 50 from each of their best songs, all based on rankings and streams, all averaged out with a huge sampling of songs to choose from. We'll start out with Carti, whose average song ranked at a 45.8, meaning that Uzi's average ranking was a 55.2, which means that on average, Playboi Carti is the better artist. Now, is this necessarily true? No. We see from the data that Uzi definitely has more streams, which to some could make the better artist. However, Carti's albums on average are ranked higher than Uzi's, which to others could make Carti the better artist. But in all honesty, data is subjective. Whichever way you do want to look at it, you could take this data and twist it in any way. What I learned from this data is that both artists have their strengths and their weaknesses. But that's not interesting. I want to know who the actual winner is. So if I had to go based off everything here, I'd say definitively Carti is the better artist. The average ranking being higher for Carti brings in a lot of factors, so I'd have to give it to him. We also have to take into account that there are only 50 songs on this list, meaning that each of these artists had a lot of songs that were worse that were cut. So if you want to look at it that way, Uzi does have more worse songs since they just have more songs in general. Uzi may have bigger hits, which definitely carried some of their songs into a higher tier, but consistently Carti makes the better music, which we saw from all the data. That being said, I love both these artists' music, so it was a ton of fun sifting through all the data to see the final results. So congratulations, Playboi Carti. You are officially the winner of this debate. Well, at least in my eyes. But what do you think? Do we finally have our answer of who's better? What do you make of the data? Have we finally solved the debate? I included the full spreadsheet, which means all of my rough drafts too, in the description below, so if you want to make your own interpretations based on the data, go for it. Leave a comment saying your favorite songs from these artists, and of course, thank you so much for watching.